us. You won't let anyone. Bring the cabbage! Now!
Question is, have there been any snowballs?
The doctor! What's he doing here? There is trouble. There is people. You've redecorated. I don't like it.
Hello and welcome to the SquishiVision review of Doctor Who Deep Breath. I had the pleasure of seeing Deep Breath at one of the cinema viewings. I went to the National Mini Museum and I saw it there, in fact wearing what I'm wearing now, which is my fez and my Doctor Who Time Lord t-shirt. So the cinema viewing of Deep Breath had some extra content as well as the main features, so I'm going to be reviewing those as well. Now, as with most of my reviews, this will be spoiler full, so if you haven't seen it and you don't want it spoiled for you, this is your, stop watching now warning. So, to start off with, I'm going to review the Deep Breath introduction prequel thing. Doesn't really have a name. Select 50th, this was mainly starring the Sontaran Strax, with some appearances from Vastra and Jenny. And much like the introduction to the 50th, it was pretty much a comedy. And to be honest, most of the jokes were actually spot on hilarious. Me and everyone else in the theatre who was watching it laughed at literally most of the jokes. The only two jokes I found Strax made jokes about basically Matt Smith's chin and Christopher Eccleston's ears, and after making jokes he started to laugh for a long time whilst images of Matt Smith and Christopher Eccleston were played on the screen. The jokes in themselves were quite amusing, even though I'm quite sick of these jokes by now because they've been done to death. In and of themselves they're fine, but then the laughing for like at least 20 seconds just killed the joke completely. If they hadn't done that it would have been better, but apart from that the other jokes were pretty much hilarious. Well, the introduction itself wasn't very much focused on the episode to come, more actually about all the previous Doctors. Strax basically describing each incarnation, and the descriptions of each are actually very much hilarious descriptions, basically taking Mickey out of each and making very good jokes for people who are fans of the classic series. So I felt it was actually very good and pretty much worth going to cinema to see. It also lampshaded the kerfuffle with the numberings now that we have the War Doctor in the middle. And I'm going to deviate slightly from reviewing the actual prequel and talk a bit about the numbering. See, I personally call John Hurt's Doctor the Ninth Doctor, and going from there I feel that's the correct way to call him. But as Neil Gaiman himself said, if you're the sort of fan who's going to correct other fans on which numbering system they should use, you're pretty much, a dweeb. So there's also the other numbering system, which I'm going to call a marketing numbering system, where Christopher Eccleston is the Ninth Doctor and so on from there, and John Hurt's the War Doctor. So either one of those numberings is fine. What's not fine is a numbering where you count David Tennant twice, and I explain why David Tennant isn't both the 10th and 11th or the 11th and 12th, whichever way you want to look at it. The reason is what we call the 9th Doctor is basically one incarnation of a Doctor, and when we say one incarnation of a Doctor, we talk about a period of a Doctor's life where we've got the same appearance and same personality. Now, because David Tennant played the Doctor with the same personality before Sun on Earth and after Journey's End, he's therefore the same Doctor. He hasn't changed. Even if he's used regeneration energy up, and even if he's regenerated, he is still, the same Doctor. So I don't really like that third numbering system where you count him twice. But the other two, I personally prefer calling John Hurt Ninth Doctor, and in my reviews I will do so. I'll probably just refer by the actor's name, because that's the least ambiguous way to refer to them. But going back onto topic, it was pretty much a very nice, hilarious introduction. Steve Moffat kind of undeniably, without doubt, right, comedy in this sense, where he's taken Mickey out of Doctor Who. His first Doctor Who foray was a parody of Doctor Who, the Curse of the Fatal Death, with Comic Relief some years ago, so he can still do that. So how I will do my full reviews, my full in-depth reviews, which is what these are, is that I will first analyse the plot, then I'll analyse the characters, then I'll analyse the dialogue, and then what I'm calling the visuals, which is both the directing and the visual effects and pretty much everything else. Now, obviously it's the first time I'm trying this, and there's a big risk that things will bleed into different categories. Parts of characters will bleed into the dialogue section. DM's going to have to try and see how well it goes. So, firstly, the plot of Deep Breath. So we start off with a T-Rex having materialised into the River Thames in London. Vastra, Strax and Jenny are called upon to investigate, and soon enough the T-Rex spits out a TARDIS. And I actually think this is actually kind of a cool concept. Stephen Moffat admitted that this is the first thing he wrote and everything else followed after, which probably isn't the best way to write an episode, to be honest. But it was actually quite a cool concept, so I have no qualms with that. Now, the thing about this episode is that the first half an hour is more focused on basically the Doctor coming to grasp with himself and Clara coming to grasp with this new Doctor. And in this sense, the plot very much takes a back seat, and this is perfectly fine because I categorise TV by either episodes that are driven by character development and character, and episodes driven by plot. And for the first half an hour, this is very much a character-driven episode. The plot very much takes a back seat, and that's perfectly a fine way to structure an episode. And actually, if you think about it, if you split the episode into, if you take away the first 30 minutes of the episode, you're then left with a further 45 minutes, which is actually the standard time for an episode. So you have 30 minutes focus on character, and then 4 or 5 minutes for a plot. It's a standard episode for a plot, which actually I think quite works well in terms of time splitting. Also dealt in this episode is basically bricklaying the story arc of Pete Capaldi's face. Now, if you remember, Pete Capaldi's previously been in the Whoniverse as he was in Fires of Pompeii in Doctor Who, and he was in Torchwood Children of Earth. Basically, a couple of months ago it was announced that Moffat was going to implement this into the story based on an idea that Russell T Davies gave him to basically explain why the new Doctor already has the same face as 2 previous established characters. Now, when this was announced, I wasn't entirely enthusiastic about this because we've had Doctors play other characters in the Whoniverse before. Most notably, Colin Baker played a character before he was the Doctor during the previous Doctor's era, and it never felt the need to explain why this actor played Doctor and a different character. It was never explained, and I didn't really see the need to explain it for Pete Capaldi. However, having seen the basically establishing threads of its plot start to emerge, I'm actually quite intrigued to see where this is going to go. And then there's a scene where the Doctor is talking with a tramp, basically saying that he's sure he's seen his own face before somewhere. It's a very well done scene, as well as being quite funny as well.
Do you ever look in the mirror and think, I've seen that face before?
Yes.
Really? When?
Well, every time I look in the mirror.
Oh, yes. Fair enough. Good point. My face is fresh on now. Play this one.
This scene genuinely intrigues me and has actually got me very interested into where they're going with this subplot, which is quite a change from before when I was completely unenthusiastic and actually against this idea. So back to the main plot of the episode. The T-Rex, which has been roaming London Thames, is suddenly blown up in a fiery fireball, and this, maddens the Doctor who had been communicating with it, because apparently the Doctor now speaks dinosaur. So he goes to investigate, and as do the Paternoster gang. And eventually the Doctor and Clara meet up in a restaurant, and this is very much where the actual plot of the episode takes over from the character development from the last half an hour. Not to say that there isn't further character development, of course there is, but this is where the plot is now coming to the forefront of the episode. The premise of the plot is that clockwork robots, similar to those we last saw in The Girl in the Fireplace, were abandoned at the dawn of time by their time-travelling spaceship, and they've been trying to repair their spaceship and themselves using organs that they've collected throughout the time, as well as resources of the time. And so we got to Victorian era, and they're still basically trying to repair themselves and repair their ships. Some people have been complaining that this is a rehash of The Girl in the Fireplace. I don't see how that's really a valid point. It's no more a rehash of The Girl in the Fireplace than every single Cyberman episode is a rehash of every other Cyberman episode, because literally in every Cyberman episode, the motivations of a Cyberman are usually the same. It's basically to conquer other planets and then convert them back into, well, not back into, but convert them into Cybermen. It's the same thing here. We've got a different set of clockwork robots who apparently feel that they're morally in the right to kill other humans to use their parts as replacements. And I don't see how that's a rehash. That's basically using the same motivation because you've got the same villains.
Forget it.
And these robots have been basically changing themselves so many times, changing their organs so many times, that they're basically now a bit confused about the real motivation. And while their original motivation was probably just to get back to the 51st century, it's now been muddled, and they somehow believe that they're destined to go to the promised land, and that becomes, you know, the main node. The guy who is the half-faced man, his main motivation to basically is basically just to survive long enough to reach there. It's a pretty standard plot, to be honest, and there's nothing really spectacularly interesting or clever about it. There's no clever twist at the end, because very much the plot is just there as a vehicle to explore Capaldi's character. And to be honest, it actually is quite a good plot to use, because the symbolism between these clockwork robots who have changed parts of their body to survive longer is very much a metaphor for the Doctor, who's regenerated over and over again to survive longer. There's only one part of the plot I don't understand, and please someone tell me this if you know, but I don't understand why the main node, the half-faced man, felt the need to escape. I mean, he was pretty much confident that his sub-robots would be able to kill the Paternoster gang and the Doctor, because he says to them as they leave, our ship's going to be repaired with your body parts. And he's clearly not scared of the police, because he scares them away as soon as they arrive. So why did he feel need to abandon the place? I mean, I assume he'd have to go back there eventually to get back to his spaceship, otherwise he'd have no way of getting off Earth, unless he was planning just to hide around until people forgot about the spaceship and then come back again. That could be possibly, yes, the only theory I can think of. And finally, the very last scene of the episode is set in Paradise. Now, obviously this is eventually going to be one of the other sub-arcs of the series, and I assume this in Doctor Who it's not actually going to be Paradise, but something else entirely. We'll eventually find that out towards the end. So the very first full scene we get, well, not full scene, but very first appearance we get of Peter Capaldi in his own episode is him stumbling out of a TARDIS, suffering from post-regeneration trauma, which traditionally affected all, I believe, all of the Doctors. It might not have affected Patrick Troughton, I can't remember, but it's affected all the ones subsequently. And in this case, the Doctor is suffering from amnesia, much like how the Sixth Doctor and Paul McGann's Doctor were affected by amnesia. He's having trouble remembering everyone's names, and to be honest, it's quite a brilliant introduction to the first scene, because it gets to show off Peter Capaldi's immense ability for physical comedy. You can just see he has complete awareness of what he's doing with his body, and it's absolutely hilarious the entire scene. I particularly love how he just confuses Strax and Clara because they're both the same heights.
Come on, Clara, you know that I speak dinosaur.
He's not Clara. I'm Clara.
Well, you're very similar heights. Maybe you should wear labels.
In terms of a Paternoster gang, this is genuine criticism I've heard, and I can't really disagree with, that none of the characters have particularly any character development since we first saw them. They're very much basically a vehicle for the plot, rather than being, you know, characters who are being focused on. But in terms of Strax, I don't really mind as much, because Strax is very much there for the comedy. And some people have been complaining, oh, this is diminishing versus Sontarans. I mean, I guess it is true that while Strax is around, we can't have another serious episode with the Sontarans. But that said, I actually quite, and I think I'm in a minority here, I actually find Strax still pretty hilarious. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's just juxtaposition. You're expecting this character to be ominous because his son's on Taran, who had a history of being ominous villains, but he's not. He's just a comedy character, and I don't know. Maybe it's a child in me, but I literally find most of the stuff he does hilarious.
Hello? Exit the box and surrender to the glory of the Sontaran Empire.
Shush.
May I take your coat?
Not wearing a coat.
What's all that?
Clothes.
May I take your clothes?
Probably not.
Are you wearing a hat?
It's hair.
No, I think it's a hat. Would you like me to check? Drastic emergency! You look better now, you're up.
Thank you, Strax.
Oh, sorry. Check of the light, you still look terrible.
Military tactics. The Doctor is still missing, but he will always come looking for his box. By bringing it here, he will be lured from the dangers of London to this place of safety, and we will melt him with acid.
Okay, that last part?
And we will not melt him with acid. Old habits. Checking this one. The Times. Shall I send it up?
Yeah, why not?
Meanwhile, back to the Doctor's character. After the death of a T-Rex, who, as I explained before, he had been communicating with, and there's quite a good analogy between the T-Rex and the Doctor both being lost from their own world. And he promised T-Rex he was going to get a T-Rex home, as it was his fault the T-Rex was in the first place, and then T-Rex was subsequently murdered. And he rushes to the burning body and basically stands over it and mourns the T-Rex. And it's quite a powerful scene from Peter Capaldi. I think before this we'd seen Peter Capaldi playing the Doctor suffering from post-duration trauma, whilst now we're seeing him slip slowly back into the darker Doctor he's going to be. And there's a perfect example of this is when basically Vastra asks,
"Who or what could have done this thing?"
and he quite viciously and aggressively tells him.
No, that is not the question.
And when Strax suggests,
The question is how.
he basically tells Strax to shut
No, shut up! You all have the brains. Pudding! Look at you. Why can't I be a decent species? Planet of the pudding brains.
And that's a quite good indicator of what to expect from this more abrasive and aggressive Doctor. Just speaking a bit about Peter Capaldi's speaking as the Doctor, some people have criticised his voice, saying that he's too quiet and stuff. I don't see it as a problem. I actually quite like the way he gives most of his speeches in sort of a hushed, sombre voice. It gives more gravity and wisdom behind the words. I do have one small complaint, and that's sometimes during his speeches he's speaking too low and his Scottish accent's too thick and you can't really hear what he's saying. I had to watch the episode again with subtitles just to get some dialogue. Someone told me that apparently people have complained to the BBC about this, and it's a problem with the sounding, which it probably is a problem with the sound mixing, because all you have to do is raise the gain on the Doctor's voice, you'd be able to hear him better. But that's pretty much my only complaint. I don't think that has anything to do with how he's delivering his lines. I think it's just simply a sound mixing error. And then there's a brilliant scene where he abandons Clara. Now, as someone who is a particular fan of McCoy's Doctor, I'm very well aware that the Doctor has been known to play, basically be a chess master with his companions. That was something that McCoy's Doctor was famous for. So I pretty much had an idea this is what he was doing at that point anyway. But it's quite brilliant how he abandons Clara. I think that's a brilliant way to distinguish. This is definitely not the same kind of Doctor that we've seen before. And now moving on to Clara, there is a notable difference in the characterization from Clara from before and Clara now. She's very much now coming out on her own and being given substantial more character. That's brilliant to see, because she's basically now she's got this brilliant more character to deal with, and Jenna Coleman is playing it brilliantly. And the part after she's abandoned is literally one of the best performances I've seen from Jenna Coleman since she's first appeared. She single-handedly made that scene extremely tense. I'm going to talk more about this scene in the visuals part of this review, but without Jenna Coleman's brilliant acting as a pretty much terrified Clara, it wouldn't sell as much. Like when she comes back, when she's brought back into the chamber and interrogated by the half-faced man, she gives usually when you see the companions setting up some monsters, they're all confident and fearless and they're swaggery. Clara gives a brilliant mix of someone who's trying to be confident because she's trying to stand her ground, but in a situation she's generally terrified, and you could see that bleed through her performance. It's a nice mix between, you know, literally I'm trying to be confident, but I'm actually just terrified at this moment. I can't lie about that. And her face was just generally the brilliant. It was the brilliant, perfect mix of those whose emotions, and probably the most realistic performance I've seen of someone trying to stand up to an enemy but they're actually generally terrified of. So then the Doctor comes back in and rips off a face that he's been using as disguise, and from this point henceforth, the Doctor has now shed all of his post-regeneration trauma and is now back as the Doctor. So he basically chases after the half-faced man who's escaped in the escape pod, and in the escape pod, which is flying over London, they basically have a talk, and the Doctor proceeds to use the best weapon available to him to try and defeat the monster, his own words. So they basically have a talk about whether or not there's any point for the robot to continue trying, you know, to survive, because it's existed so long, changing itself and such, and you know, is there any point of it going on? And in a very Sylvester McCoy fashion, the Doctor then proceeds to basically try to talk the robot into killing itself. The robot then says,
Self-destruction is against my basic program.
and the Doctor says,
Murder is against mine.
and they have a bit of a physical struggle, which is actually kind of nice to see, because while I understand perfectly that the Doctor is a technical pacifist, as of late he's been a bit thrown about too much, a bit manhandled too much. You've got to remember that even though the Doctor is a pacifist, he's also an expert in martial arts, you know, as we saw with John Pertwee's Doctor, who was, you know, an expert in Venusian karate or whatever it was. And so, but like with the 11th Doctor and a bit of the 10th Doctor, they seem to have been, you know, pushed around, manhandled a bit much. You'd think that at least he'd be able to do a good effort in defending himself if he was attacked. And it's nice to see that this Doctor, you know, isn't immediately overthrown when the robot attacks him. They actually, you know, they grapple for a good few minutes. And indeed the robot says that
You are stronger than you look.
eventually the Doctor then tells the robot that
You realize, of course, one of us is lying about our basic programming.
and he says,
And I think we both know who that is.
and then moments later we see the robot basically falling to his death, and it's never revealed what actually happens. And I think this is a stroke of brilliance, and I'm so glad they didn't reveal what actually happened, because it leaves that level of ambiguity which is a great appeal to Doctor Who. So we don't know whether or not the Doctor pushed him or whether he jumped himself. But remember, even if the Doctor didn't push the robot, he still effectively talked the robot into killing himself, which is very dark, but no way unprecedented. As I've said before, it's a very Sylvester McCoy feel to it. It's the sort of thing that Sylvester McCoy's Doctor was quite dark about doing. Finally, the end of the episode finishes off with the Doctor and Clara basically talking on whether or not Clara wants to stay with the Doctor, considering that he's now changed so much from the young, dashing Doctor that Matt Smith was. And this is the moment when Matt Smith's Doctor phones Clara from Trenzalore. Now, when I heard about this, because it was leaked onto the internet a couple of months ago, I wasn't happy about it, because in my opinion it would just undermine Capaldi's episode to have Matt Smith appear at the end. And my opinion of that hasn't actually changed. I still feel it was unnecessary. I still feel they could have done the same thing without having Matt Smith appear. I just think I feel it's just, you know, pandering to fangirls who can't let past Doctors go, and I wasn't terribly enthusiastic about it. And also, if any of the companions should ever be comfortable with the Doctor regenerating, you'd think it'd be Clara, who not only has physically on screen met Matt Smith's Doctor, John Hurt's Doctor and David Tennant's Doctor, it's been established she's also had adventures with all of the previous Doctors before, so she should be familiar with the fact that the Doctor's got different personalities. However, the scene immediately after Matt Smith's cameo is a very beautiful scene between the Doctor and Clara, where the Doctor basically says to Clara,
You can't see me, can you? You look at me and you can't see me. Do you have an idea what that's like? I'm not on the phone, I'm right here. Standing in front of you. Please, just see me.
I feel it's a very nice scene. It's a very nice sentimental scene where the Doctor's basically begging Clara to, see him as the Doctor. And I feel the way that the scene was directed is very, very similar to the way that it reminds me a lot in terms of feel to the end scene of End of the World, where Chris Eccleston's Doctor was comforting Rose about her seeing death of her planet. In this way, the Doctor is trying to comfort Clara in him being different but still the same man. Also, hilariously, this scene is set in Glasgow. I visited Glasgow earlier this year, and guess what I happened to find? Right, about the dialogue, one thing I wanted to mention, as of late, especially considering we've just had the 50th anniversary year, Moffat has included a lot of references to dialogues from the classic series. Now, during the 50th anniversary, it made sense, it was nice to see, but my god, they're overusing the "you've redecorated, I don't like it" line so much, it's just losing all impact. When it was used during the 50th, when it was used during closing time, when it was used whenever else it was used, it was actually quite a good nod. Now it's just being, parodied in a sense. And also in this episode, Vastra, inadvertently I assume, quotes the Brigadier after seeing the regenerated Doctor by saying,
Well then, here we go again.
and I guess it's a nice nod. I'm not entirely sure how Vastra delivered the line was quite the best way to deliver it. If you're going to inadvertently quote a dialogue, you should at least say it the same way that it was said and, just compare the two.
Well, here we go again.
Well then, here we go again.
So the first scene after titles, Doctor's complaining about the pointlessness of bedrooms.
Why is there only a bed in it?
Because it's a bedroom. It's for sleeping in.
Okay, what do you do when you're awake?
You leave the room.
So you've got a whole room for not being awake in. But what's the point? You're just missing the room.
It seems pretty hilarious, although I did feel like I was watching Black Books rather than Doctor Who.
He lives,
Had better be good, Manny. This
lives
had better be perfect.
in, Bottle Bank.
Oh, brilliant! Fabulous!
And, he plays the trombone.
Keep going, keep going.
And, he only eats, licorice.
Manny, this is solid gold. Solid gold.
His best friend is a panda.
No!
And there's no shortage of jokes about how Capaldi is different both in appearance, accent and personality to previous Doctors, such as brilliant quotes as these.
Man, don't look in that mirror. It's absolutely furious.
Doctor!
Why do you keep talking like that? What's gone wrong with your accent? Why do you...
Nothing's wrong with her accent.
You sound the same. It's spreading. You all sound all English. No, you've all developed a fault.
Look, it's covered in lines. But I didn't do the frowning. You frowned me this face.
I don't like it.
What?
Your face.
Well, I don't like it either. But it's all right up until the eyebrows. Then it just goes haywire. Look at the eyebrows. These are attack eyebrows. You could take bottle tops off with these.
They are mighty eyebrows indeed, sir.
That's good. I'm Scottish. I'm Scottish. I am Scottish. I can complain about things. I can really complain about things now.
What devilry is this, sir?
I don't know. But I probably blame the English.
Now we get to the point in the episode which is quite some contention by certain reviewers, such as Mr. TARDIS Reviews, they're basically complaining that this scene of dialogue, much like the pond dialogue in Snowman, was actually, while it sounded quite clever, is actually quite stupid lines of dialogue. Personally, I actually quite enjoyed the symbolisms between Vale, Doctor's face being veiled for his true personality, like he subconsciously chooses a face to try and appeal to people. And I particularly like the implication that the Doctor's now showing his age through his new face because he now trusts Clara. I mean, that would seem to imply that previous companions weren't trusted, so it doesn't really fit there. But I do like what it's trying to imply, even if it doesn't deliver quite well. And I think that's the worst thing about this scene, is it doesn't really fit with previously established characterization. I mean, Clara's, it was said in Time of the Doctor that Clara did fancy the Doctor, so this episode seems to disregard that. But to be honest, I'm fine with that. Time of the Doctor was an episode which I like to think only vaguely happened. The scene in the restaurant between the Doctor and Clara is pretty much the highlight in terms of dialogue of this episode. It's basically the Doctor and Clara beginning to re-establish their relationship. It's also hilarious because basically Clara was drawn to the restaurant because she saw a puzzle in the newspaper, which when she solved it revealed that the restaurant was where she was supposed to meet with the Doctor. She believes the Doctor put the article into newspaper and, you know, basically says...
So what kind of person would put a cryptic note in a newspaper advert?
The Doctor says that
The person would be an egomaniac, needy game player sort of person.
This initially satisfies Clara until the Doctor reveals that he assumed she put the advert into the newspaper because it wasn't him. And he was basically calling Clara that, to which Clara responds...
Egomaniac, needy game player?
This could be a trap.
That was me.
Never mind that.
Yes, I am minding that.
Clara,
You were talking about me.
Clara, what is happening right now in this restaurant to you and me is more important than your egomania.
Nothing is more important than my egomania.
Right, you actually said that.
You never mention that again.
So I've already touched upon how brilliant the scene between the Doctor and the half-faced man in his escape pod was in the character section review. It's certainly this episode's establishing a scene with the Doctor as the Doctor. And, you know, the dialogue throughout that scene is, you know, brilliant. It's basically symbolisms between, you know, the Doctor changing himself over and over again, and these roids changing themselves over and over again. And it also continues to lay down the story arc of the Doctor's face with you know, this brilliant scene. Just watch how he delivers a line when the mirror reactions.
You are a broom. Question. You take a broom, you replace the handle. And then later, you replace the brush. And you do that over and over again. Is it still the same broom? Answer, no, of course it isn't, but you can still sweep the floor, which is not strictly relevant. Skip that last part. You have replaced every piece of yourself, mechanical and organic, time and time again. There's not a trace of the original you left. You probably can't even remember where you got that face from.
Finally, the visuals. Now, the most disappointing without doubt thing about this episode was the visual effects. Honestly, it looks like pre-visuals, which is what they do when they're basically, is what literally the prototype CGI scenes. So they haven't put the texture on, they haven't refined all of the CGI. But that's what it looks like. Either that or a video game. I mean, just look at the T-Rex. The CGI of T-Rex is pretty rubbish. It looks like a video game, and the establishing shots of London look like a different video game cutscene, not from an episode of Doctor Who. And I'm quite disappointed. I really hope we see where the CGI budget went in this series, because oh god, it definitely didn't go in this episode. And also, this is generally confusing me. There are parts in the first scene where suddenly we cut to slow motion cam. I don't know why. I mean, just look at these scenes.
Wait for it. Now. And then in this second clip, wait for it, and now.
Yeah, two moments where the shots of the Doctor and he's just gone slow motion. I'm not sure why. I'm just generally confused. If someone can interpret this for me and find me referring why, what the director was wanting to convey, because it's obviously deliberate. You don't accidentally go in slow motion. But I'm generally confused of what I'm trying to look for here. Okay, we have to address verping titles. Verping titles look fan-made, and that's because they were fan-made. What happened is Stephen Moffat found a fan-made video that he saw on YouTube and said, hey, we should use this, and he basically got the person in to consult with BBC Wales, VFX, and they basically made the final product. I saw the fan-made titles ages ago on YouTube because they were trending quite a bit, and I didn't like them then. I felt they were too cartoony, too video gamey, and I certainly didn't like it when it was actually in the actual episode. To be honest, if anything, although I like neither, I actually prefer the YouTube version to the TV version. If the YouTube version used an actual face for, if the YouTube version used a better picture of the Doctor for the face part, that would actually be better than the TV version. But to be honest, I like neither. I mean, for starters, we're breaking from tradition here because before all the opening titles have been interpretations of the time vortex. This one obviously is not the time vortex unless the time vortex now looks like a giant clock. Also, this is a small thing, and this should annoy me because it's very Joel Schumacher, but there's a scene where the Doctor basically Vastra tricks him to knocking himself out of sleep, and when he does that, you hear this sound effect.
Would you want a psychic link with me? The size of my brain will be like dropping a piano on you.
Be gentle then.
I'll try. Brace yourself. Piano.
I love my...
And that's really cartoony and Tom and Jerry, and it should annoy me because it's like breaking, you know, the tone of the episode. But to be honest, it actually makes me laugh. I think this is the inner child, same thing that makes me laugh at Strax and makes me laugh at this. I shouldn't like it. You know, it was stupid when Joel Schumacher used it in Batman and Robin. I don't know, I just like it. There are some slight pacing issues with the episode. The scenes with the Paternoster gang and Clara after the Doctor's jumped into the Thames, we go back to the next day, and the scenes filmed here are quite slow and drab, and you know, stretch on longer than they should do. Especially the dialogue between Strax and Clara, where Strax is giving Clara a medical examination. It barely justifies the point of the dialogue, which is that Strax thinks the Doctor might not come back for Clara. Apparently, this scene was written in because there's a competition to use a competition for fans to design a new device to feature an episode, which was Strax's medical analyzer. It's fine, do these competitions, but don't do them in a way where then you have to shoehorn things in. Make sure when they fit in, they don't ruin the pacing of the episode. That's the worst thing you should do. But the best thing with the directing of this episode that impressed me immensely with the director is that this episode was actually genuinely thrilling at some points. It looks so scary. I wasn't scared, but I was, you know, at some points just enthralled by the tenseness of certain scenes, and that's a tenseness that has been missing in Doctor Who for quite a long time now. So the title of this episode, Deep Breath, comes from the fact that the robots don't respirate, they don't breathe. And apparently the robots can tell if someone is breathing. That's how they tell if someone's a robot to an actual person. So the way to fool them is to hold their breath. By holding your breath, they believe you're one of them if they haven't seen you before. So obviously the Doctor asks Clara, when Clara asks him how they can disguise themselves, he goes, well,
how long can you hold your breath?
That's basically where the Deep Breath title of the episode comes from, and from there we get quite a lot of tense moments. Clockwork robots in this episode were also, I found, they were genuinely terrifying, more so than they were in The Girl in the Fireplace. I mentioned, you know, Coleman's performance as Clara in the character section, and there have been rumours that Coleman is leaving a Christmas special. Now, this was reported on by The Mirror, which is barely a newspaper and more, you know, pile of crap. So people who are believing that Coleman is leaving based on that deserve to be lied to. She might be leaving, she might not be. We don't know because we can't trust The Mirror on anything. It's The Mirror. Literally, if you don't believe The Mirror, you deserve to be lied to. But there are rumours that she might be leaving, and because of those rumours, I generally didn't know in certain scenes of this episode if Clara would actually survive or not. I generally were at some points convinced that she might actually die. And that's, you know, that's a good impact leaving your audience, because if your audience aren't convinced that your main characters will survive or not, then that makes it easier to make things more tense. Because if you know your characters will survive, there's literally no suspension in the episode. And there was suspense. Oh, there was so much suspense in this episode because I generally didn't know if Clara would survive the episode or not. And the scene where Clara's holding her breath and trying to escape a spaceship was brilliantly directed. The way that, you know, we had muted noises, but then it emphasised her heartbeat and the we got, you know, point of view shots from her, and you can really see that her vision was like flashing, because, you know, when you hold your breath, your vision starts to dim and you see bright lights that sparkle in your eyes and stuff. And it generally was quite claustrophobic directing. You felt like the outside air was squashing in on you because you're holding your breath. And even if you weren't holding your breath, you felt like you were, because it gave the effect that the outside air was pressing in on you. And I felt that was quite very well done directing. It helped the scene enormously. That, and coupled with Coleman's performance, was brilliantly done.
How long can you hold your breath?
Then there's Clara's confrontation with the half-faced man. Now, the ploy, you know, oh, you can't kill me because I have information keeping me alive, has been done before on television and in Doctor Who, and usually the villain's, you know, forced to accept this line of logic and back down. And the acting of the man who plays half-faced man is phenomenal here, because he really gives the impression that this is an enemy who you can't reason with. He isn't going to back down. He wants information and he'll get to you. And he came across as a very threatening enemy. You know, Clara's busy trying to be confident in everything, and he just pulls off his hand and reveals a blowtorch, and Clara just breaks down crying, and her bravado starts to crack, because he's genuinely that terrifying an enemy. And because I mentioned before how Coleman's very convincing with how terrified she is, we feel terrified with her, and I literally haven't felt that, you know, tense with an enemy Doctor Who in quite a long time.
All you can offer me is my life. What you can't do is threaten it. You can negotiate. Okay, yes, I'm crying, and it's just because I am very frightened of you, and if you know anything about human beings, that means you're in a lot of trouble.
We will not negotiate.
You don't have a choice. I tell you what, I'll answer your questions if you answer mine.
We will not answer questions.
We'll take turns. I'll go first. Why'd you kill the dinosaur?
We will not answer
Why'd you
questions.
kill the dinosaur?
We will not answer questions!
Then you might as well kill me, because I'm not talking again until you do.
The epitome of suspense in this scene is when Clara's basically reaching behind her, praying that the Doctor's got her back. And I generally couldn't call it either way if the Doctor would come back for her, because last time we saw him, he was still on the, you know, still suffering a bit from his post-regeneration trauma. He still wasn't completely there. He wasn't still completely the Doctor. He could have just abandoned Clara and gone off and do his own thing and forgotten all about her, because he was quite, you know,
still the Doctor.
brain scattered earlier. And I generally couldn't call it either way. And the scene stretches out, and the music behind it stretches out just enough that you begin to doubt what's going to happen. And then eventually, just as he reaches the epitome of suspense and epitome of doubt, he grabs her hand, and that scene was brilliantly done, and it just then makes the next scene where the Doctor's being a Doctor even more brilliant. There is the difference between Capaldi becoming the Doctor in this episode when he takes the face off, and Matt Smith becoming the Doctor in 11th Hour when he walks through the hologram, is that one was more adventurous, more energetic, more uplifting. Well, here, you know, the Doctor had already won, and then he goes and brings back the Traxi to have a go at them, and this was his establishing character moment. And then we have this episode where it brings you down in doubt and fear so much, and then you come back to hope, and that's pretty establishing for how Capaldi's Doctor, I assume, is going to be. So that was a brilliantly directed scene. I've watched that scene quite a few times because it was just that good. I'm also going to end on a summary of an important thing that this episode, and indeed this series, has to accomplish. Before I went to see this episode, I said to Max that one thing Moffat needs to achieve for this episode and this series is that he needs to reunify the fandom. Now, I am still very much pro Moffat. I still very much enjoy Moffat's writing, even though I know he's made mistakes, although those mistakes are more production mistakes rather than writing mistakes. You see this video, I'll go into more detail about that. But even though I still am pro Moffat, I can't deny that he has split the fandom quite, you know, spectacularly. That's one thing a producer shouldn't do. You shouldn't split the fandom into two opposing halves. So if Moffat wants to keep his job as executive producer and showrunner, he needs to reunify the fandom and bring back the faith in those who don't like him anymore. And I feel he's on his way to doing that, because I have a friend called Zoe who we always argue about Doctor Who because she's, you know, pretty much anti-Moffat and I'm pro-Moffat, and we've always had opposing views on Doctor Who episodes. But for once, in a miraculous moment, we found we actually pretty much agreed on this episode, and that's, you know, a miracle in itself. And this very much shows that Moffat has started to. He's done good basically in his episode. If he continues this and, you know, improves on this, he might actually, fingers crossed, reunify the fandom. And looking at the writer credits for the series, he co-writes a lot of episodes, which I think is a good move by him, because some people have complained that he's putting too much work on himself, which is why his episodes are not as good as they used to be. So I feel that if he's taking a step back and, you know, concentrating a bit more on his production role and spreading his writing out, his writing might actually now be better. So after the episode, we basically got shown a 10-minute behind the scenes called Doctor Who Extra. It was nice, and I as a filmmaker enjoy watching behind the scene videos, but all it did really was remind me how much we all want Doctor Who Confidential to come back. I was going to finish off with a live Q&A. Now, the live Q&A was actually quite good. There were some generally good questions, like someone asked Capaldi if he implemented any of the previous Doctors' personality into his performance, and him and Stephen Moffat had some quite good banter about whether or not we should bring back Mondasian Cybermen completely rather than ambiguously, which, you know, made all the classic fans chuckle a bit. But oh my god, please can we stop giving Zoe Ball Doctor Who presenting roles, because she just annoys the heck out of me and it annoys the heck out of everyone who I've asked. She's just so annoying. I mean, she was borderline okay in Doctor Who Live, The Next Doctor, where we revealed P. Capaldi's playing the Doctor. She was, oh my god, just so inappropriate and so crap during the completely rubbish Doctor Who after party from the 50th. And in here, she was just so annoying. Her jokes are still making my head just burst right now with pain. Please, BBC, just get someone else. Get someone better. Get me, I'll do it, for God's sake. I'm better than her. I don't care. It's not her, right? So yeah, that was my review of Doctor Who Deep Breath and the supplementary material that was in some reviewing. So yeah, this is me breaking into the whole reviewing on YouTube for Ray fully as a regular feature. So yeah, please let me know in comments what you think of my reviewing style. I expected a lot to be improved, so feedback would be appreciated. If you agree with any of the points I've made, disagree with any points I've made, let me know. Follow me on at SquishiVision on Twitter. Remember to look at my other channels, the links are in the description below, assuming they're still below and YouTube hasn't changed the layout again. And yeah, I'm sorry this is like a whole week late. I wanted to publish this before Into the Dalek, but that's not going to happen now. So yeah, I'll see you in a couple of days with Into the Dalek review, hopefully. And until then, squishy out.
Where the hell have you been?
It's not my fault. I got distracted.
By what?
You could always find something. Come on.
Where are we going?
Into darkness. Welcome to the most dangerous place in the universe.
They're coming! They're coming!
The enemy are right on top of us!
I'm sorry.
If it happens there, people will ask, well, why do we just do it here as well? It's like Soap and Peeper, which we fought back at a couple of years ago, and we can fight back at this too.